I hold are largely reflected also by the kind of work that I've done. I have done some work for nonprofits and 501Cs, not always 501C3s, but from the Montana Police Protective Association on here are some of their issues with pay. I represented the cities when they were trying to buy Northwestern Energy. They formed the Montana Public Power Authority, and then also a nonprofit association with that. Represented ARP Montana on affordable energy issues in front of the Public Service Commission. So I've had a good opportunity to work in a lot of different areas and also represented some businesses, some conservation districts, some government entities. So a good broad base. And that's broad base combined with the government service hopefully will serve me well if I'm so fortunate to get elected Attorney General. I have a great number of priorities for this office, and I could talk about it forever. I mean, we can look at the website as part of that, but I know that you're not here necessarily to listen to Steve on law enforcement, and Steve on this, and Steve on that. What you're here for is to hear a little bit more about nonprofits and Bullock's view and vision of what that should be. And I think one of Brian's questions was your personal and professional experience with nonprofits. And I think I've had those experiences both as a board member, as a founder, a director, and also as a lawyer. I mean, I see my executive director, Betty Hall Munger. I've been so fortunate to serve on the Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies board, and still do. And that experience was not unlike what most of your board's experiences probably start out. It's like, Steve will only have about 3 meetings a year. You get to drink wine, and nice, and work. Then the next thing you know, you're divested in personnel policies and liability and discuss what a fiduciary duty is. And all these things that, you know, they don't always even serve wine. But it's not one of those. It's hard work, and it's real work, and it's such important work. And I've really enjoyed it in part because it's you know, mentally taxing. It's challenging. It's more than just trying to raise a little bit of money. It's actually serving as somebody to help you fulfill what your cause is. I've enjoyed that. I also serve right now on the Gates of the Mountains Foundation, which holds the land out there. I grew up as a tour boat driver out in the Gates of the Mountains. It was my summer job. But that's been more the rare and occasional meeting. Not necessarily a 501c3, but also had the opportunity to form a 501c or a not-for-profit. Already talked 15 minutes. Another problem with lawyers. I'll try to be a little bit quick and abbreviate the rest of it. But in 2006, it troubled me that we could pay $5.15 an hour and consider that any sort of wage. So I formed a group, a registered group called Raise Montana. We formed a 501c4, wrote the ballot initiative, and with the work of volunteers across the state, 25,000 Montanans got a well-deserved raise by that ballot initiative. And I've also, and I'll try not to take too much more time, Brian, because I also have to run through some priorities at least, but it's a regulator. Well, in the Attorney General's office, and that's probably where I should have began, is a nonprofit can't dissolve without notifying the Attorney General's office. Charitable trusts, to make sure that those charitable purposes are fulfilled, that's the obligation of the Attorney General. And among other responsibilities while at the Attorney General's office, I worked with, okay, we're going to have to dissolve the scholarship fund because there aren't any students left in this area, but how can we make sure that those charitable purposes are fulfilled? And when the public's interest needs to be served in court as relates to nonprofits or through a dissolution, otherwise the Attorney General fulfills that obligation. So it's essential, I think, that the Attorney General understands what you do and supports what you do. I've had those experiences. I've also regularly and hopefully am kind with whatever extra dollars that I give, because I know how hard fundraising is, as you do. That wouldn't be a pitch for you to write a check after this talk, but typically try to help out quite a bit as well. I think that there are a lot of things that the Attorney General can do. I'll run over them real briefly, and maybe that we can also add to that through questioning, one of which is active consumer protection. Montana was one of 2 states in the country where the Consumer Protection Authority wasn't vested in the Attorney General's office. So what you had as a result is very little. And the legitimacy of your organizations, unfortunately, are undermined by the scams and schemes of others. So it's an act of consumer protection to make sure that when people are defrauded, that we can do everything that we can to get that money back, and also an education preventative portion that would be one of the many priorities that I think will help build your sector. I think there's also things that the attorneys general can do to aid and assist in your mission. I mean, if you go to the Minnesota AG's office, every state has this responsibility of some sort of oversight and regulatory responsibilities of attorney generals or of nonprofits. If you go to their website, as but one example, they say, we can't be your lawyer, but here's a primer on fiduciary duties. We can't be your lawyer, but I know that you're struggling with a $20,000 organization, so here's an example of sexual harassment policies. And things like that, I think that hopefully I can constructively aid as Attorney General when you have unfulfilled needs. I mean, the nonprofit association's done great work in doing a lot of that. But there should be some holes that ultimately the Attorney General can fulfill. Another is working directly with charities that fulfill some of the department's aims. The office has often been involved in activities like with the law enforcement torch run. But the Virginia Attorney General, this was a number of years ago, said, you know what? The #1 law enforcement issue that I need to push is after-school mentoring programs. Because we know that if kids are involved in these sorts of programs, first we know most crime occurs, adolescent crime occurs between the hours of 3 and 4. But we also know that if they're involved, they're 46% less likely to experiment with drugs and alcohol, 33% less likely to act violently, 50% less likely to skip school, just by having after-school mentoring programs, just by having the programs that you work so hard on, many of you in that part of the nonprofit sector on a regular basis. So that will be a priority, and other states have done it. I mean, I think it was Kansas that I just saw had a governmental program that's not supplanting what you're trying to do, but supporting it with mentoring, saying Kansas Mentors. That I should be able to, if this is a #1 law enforcement priority, is making sure that our kids are taken care of. I need to do what I can, not to supplant, but to support your mission in whatever ways that I can. And I intend to do that. So there's only, I guess, 3, working with charities to directly fulfill the department's aims, trying to provide aid to assist you in your mission, and active consumer protection. This is a fantastic job. It's an important job. There's literature out on the back table. I know that we don't usually talk politics at 501c3s. There's bumper stickers back there. If you'll put one on, I'll personally peel it off your car after the election. These are so important. I appreciate the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you today, and I'd certainly welcome any questions there might be. Ryan says we have 10 minutes.
And there's two mics set up. I'm not sure if they're on, but we'll make sure.
Steve, Linda Reed, we know each other. And I'm curious what you would do as an Attorney General to help regulate, re-regulate, whatever is necessary, predatory lenders in Montana.
Thanks for the question, Linda. And that's one of the things on my website that I talk about quite a bit as well. To me, it's fairly egregious that we can have interest rates in excess of 400%. And if I